Long, long ago, there lived a king and queen who each and every day cried to one another, "If only I had a child," and yet none ever came. But one day, as the queen was sitting in her bath, a frog crawled out of the nearby pond and spoke to her. "Your wish will be fulfilled. Before a year is past, you shall bear a daughter." The frog's prophecy came true, and the king bore a little girl so beautiful that the king could hardly contain himself, and he called for a great celebration. He invited only the royal family, but also his friends and many, many wise women. And since the king had 12 plates, there were 12 wise women who came. The festivities were celebrated with great splendor, and at the end, each wise woman stepped forward to bless the child. The first blessed her with virtue and beauty and riches, and so on. But after 11 of them had spoken, the 13th wise woman suddenly appeared. She was set on revenge for not having been invited, and she didn't offer any words of niceness. In a booming voice, she then pronounced, on her 15th birthday, the prince will prick her finger on a spindle and fall down dead. And without another word, she ran off. Well, the 12th wise woman was dumbstruck, and she said, "I cannot change the fate, but I will change it a bit. It shall not be death into which the fair girl will fall, but a deep sleep to last 100 years. The king, who wanted desperately to spare his child from this harsh destiny, to cry that every single spindle in the entire kingdom should be burned, so that she could not prick her finger and she would not fall into the deep, deep sleep. As the girl knew, the gifts of the other wise women ripened, and she blossomed into such a beautiful, well-mannered, loving, and understanding child that everyone who saw her fell under her beautiful spell. On the day she was turned 15, the king and queen happened to be away from court. She was left at home all by herself, and she wandered all throughout the castle until she found one door that was locked, and inside was an old woman spinning flax on a wheel. "Good day, old lady," said the princess. "What are you doing here?" "I'm spinning," replied the old woman, nodding her head. "What is that funny thing bobbing up and down?" the princess asked, reaching for the spindle, wanting to spin. Scarcely had she touched it than she pricked her finger. "Oh, no!" and she fell into a deep, deep sleep. The king and queen, who had just returned, also fell into a sleep. The horses and dogs fell asleep. The flies fell asleep. Even the cook fell asleep. All around the castle, a wild, wild, wild rose bushes grew and grew and grew. All around it, and Sleeping Beauty all by herself with all the other people asleep. Now, many people heard the story of Sleeping Beauty. Many princes tried to penetrate the brambles and all of the bushes to get through, but none of them were able to get through. Each of them inevitably met a miserable fate, trapped inside all the briars and thistles and terrible things that grew up around the castle. After many, many years, came yet another prince into the land. He heard from an old man the tale of the brambles surrounding a hidden castle and of the sleeping princess named Sleeping Beauty. He was said to have spent 100 years. She had been asleep for 100 years. The old man knew from his grandfather that many princes had come with high hopes and sharp swords, and he told the young prince about the whole story. What he didn't know was that 100 years was almost up, and so as the prince approached the castle, all the brambles faded away, and he came inside the castle's walls. He found horses sleeping and everyone else asleep. He saw the doves asleep, the flies asleep, and he came upon the sleeping princess. On he went, and the place was so hush that he could hear his every breath. And finally he reached the staircase of the old tower. He came up to the princess and kissed her on her lips. Down they went together, awake all of a sudden, and the whole of the place woke up. The flies, the horses, the cats, the birds. And all of a sudden the hearth's fire flamed again, and the cooking began again, and the prince and Sleeping Beauty were married in a dazzling ceremony, and they lived contentment all the days of their lives.